Hello everybody, welcome back. It's the 18th of August, 2025. We got a big die-off week ahead of us, this whole week. And so we're going to lay a bit of a foundation for the rest of the week. These are difficult shows as it is. And the poll kind of tells the story. Is Japan and the International Atomic Energy Agency hiding Fukushima's fuel pool's meltdown because it's behind Earth's extinction event of all species, including you? And we're going to provide you with the documentation for our assertions. We're going to start off with a song from James, because I'm still slow. Very, very slow. He's been hammering out crazy music this week. That video is very, very, very high on my shit list, important topic to get after. I fought with them in the comments section before. The guy's picture number 3 video, the 3 12-second video. They're still lying to you about nuclear is what we're going to kick it off with tonight. I'll be right back after that song. Please hang around. It's anti-nuclear music and you are not going to find anything better. We've seen a little tiny bit.
He chewing on that metal, says it don't do harm. Plutonium in his pocket, like it's a lucky charm. But talk don't kill what's crawling, and them atoms at your bones. Said the dead don't count. Yeah, said the dead don't count. Ain't gone by morning. They cross your name out. Got fruit on the table, talk about Denver sky, but Curium run that river. Don't look, don't lie. They still lie to you with a smile full of steam. They still lie to you, but the ground still screams. Shrink the cord to trick you. Call it safe, call it trim, but the case still got teeth, and they chew your limb. They still lie to you, same tongue, new crime. They still and that core keep time.
If this was back in the day when MTV first started up, music videos, can you imagine how great that video would have been? And how much impact that would have had? And that probably would have got aired back then. But we don't live back then, unfortunately. But the music makes up for it. As James Luce's website now, he's approaching 400 songs, anti-nuclear songs. That's so crazy. That is so crazy, man. The nuclear industry must just hate every one of those songs. Even more than they hate me, actually. Imagine that. Try putting that statement there somewhere. Hello, everybody. So we didn't get a show in last night. We got a forest fire, as everybody's aware, that's regular here for the last 3 weeks. The wind changed a couple of days ago, and the smoke was pretty brutal. Even if you just crack you in a little bit, it's just, holy shit. I should have got out of here. Should have went somewhere else, went camping or something. But we had a heat wave, and the heat wave just passed, so to speak. Thank goodness, but we still had smoke. Fire still burning. We're supposed to get rain, heavy rain tonight. And you wouldn't believe the amount of smoke down. Well, I guess you would. Everybody's used to it, right? Since Fukushima, the forest fires have been much more intense because you kill the bacteria and the fungus in the forest, so it doesn't soak up water anymore. You can call into the shows, 709-589-4406, and I'll finish that sentence I just started later in the show. I'm going to be doing die-offs this week. I have 6,446 clicks. So a click looks like that. Here we go. So this was the thumbnail tonight. So I'm a bit slow, I know. We didn't do the show the weekend because of the heat wave. You couldn't get in the studio. And that's finally passed. We have the shortest summer on the planet. And it just bon voyaged. So that was the one I posted. But here's an actual real whale. This was in Belgium a couple of weeks back. What, about a month ago? It's completely emaciated, peanut head. It's got a shoulder blade sticking out. Rib cages are sticking out. You can count all the invertebrates in its spine. But even they begrudgingly acknowledge that it was actually emaciated. We've never seen them emaciated until post-Fukushima, until after Japan's nuclear event, where you lost all the fuel pools in the inventories. We'll cover that a little bit, just in case you're not familiar with this topic, coming up in a few moments. So it's always hard to start off these stories. It's even harder to tell the stories because they're so convoluted and complicated. So let's go backwards. March 28, 2023. Tonight we're going to go backwards 2014, 2015, 16, 17. And then, because we just got so much material to get through, and it's gathering up. And this story is more important than the news cycle by far. And so we might even extend this into 2 or 3 weeks. Look, clearly we can do die-off videos, and the research videos will take us at least a year, 5 days a week to get through it all. That's how much we've actually gathered up post-Fukushima in the last 14 years. It will take us a whole year to cover everything. And I don't know if we can cover the 250,000 pictures that I took, and not counting all the videos underwater footage in the entirety. We should try. Seems as he took down my other site when I was out looking for spiders. It's a terrible industry, terrible people, and we're dedicated to holding them accountable. Sailboat crew rescued in the Pacific after abandoning a ship sunk by whale. This was an interesting one where they quoted Noah. I think it was Noah. And this one, I can't remember the other one. But 1,200 reports of whales and boats colliding since a worldwide database launched in 2007. In 2007. a worldwide database. According to Berkeley, there's 20,000 whales die every year, most of them by ship strikes. And there's other things I'm going to show you according to... This was a story I got tonight just before we went live. I'm going to bring it into the show. Because it shocked me to my core. On Tuesday, an unusual incident occurred. That's an interesting way to start off the story. The very first sentence in the very first paragraph is unusual, the word unusual. That's important coming up. Don't forget about that word. The sea washed ashore the body of a 15-meter whale, a 45-foot whale. But it was unusual, okay? What's not unusual, apparently, is according to scientists from the University of California, around 20,000 whales worldwide die each year as a result of collisions with ships. They're hounding them. Like, Ma, there's a ship over there, get Pa, we're gonna go smack that thing around a bit. Is that what's happening? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe whales talk like us, they're just shy around us and they don't talk. I could be wrong, or I could be crazy. It's true. Around 20,000 whales worldwide die each year as a result of collisions with ships. Apparently all the skippers on the planet have sworn an oath to hunt down all the whales because of what Moby Dick done back in the day to that poor sailor. They're going to get revenge, Dana. Or, which is interesting that UC Berkeley, University of California, says 20,000 whales die every year, including humpbacks, such as humpbacks. This was a story that the blob, post-Fukushima blob, which is Fukushima. Instead of calling it the blob, you're supposed to call it Fukushima blob. 7,000 humpback whales may have starved to death during the Fukushima blob heat wave. That's never going to go away, by the way. We need to be vigilant. Declining humpback whale population blamed on warming waters. Don't worry, if it doesn't make sense, it will. It always does. In 2012, there was about 33,000 humpbacks, the year after Fukushima. It's hard to believe anything these people tell you, but let's go with it. Average population growth was 5.9% between 2002 and 2013 is what I think they're trying to say. Not 5.9 whales, but 5.9%. From 2012 to 21, there was an estimated population decline of nearly 7,000 whales in the North Pacific. The plankton is their main... What happens is the warmer water impact on the way the food web works, the food chain itself, started all the way down to the bottom with the plankton, which is the basis of the food chain, the basis of the oxygen chain, the basis of the carbon sequestering chain. It's 50% of oxygen on the planet. When in the Pacific phytoplankton. So the same thing with freshwater plankton, they make oxygen, right? When plankton is disrupted because of the warmer water, that works its way all the way up the food chain to the prey that humpbacks are looking for. The study found prey availability was reduced as a result of warming waters, which led to humpback whales becoming emaciated. We have a different version. We'll get to that right away. Yeah, the smoke. I desperately wanted to do a show last night. I was determined to do a show last night. But you'd be surprised how smoke will cut your throat apart. I don't think you would be if you ever went camping, but nearly 7,000. There was an estimated population decline of 7,000 whales, which happens to correspond with 7,000 whales. 7,000 whales died of starvation. So, like, you got different stories. The phytoplankton chain was broken by radioactive fallout from Japan. I'll explain that to you coming up. So why is Berkeley being quoted? Now, this is a foreign story that I'm not even sure where the hell that story is. We cover so much that normally never happens to me. I usually does my work. I didn't see. It's SZCZECIN. I'm not sure where the hell that's to off top. Oh, that's the Polish press. I'm sorry. I know the difference. It's just when you put the stories together, like I got together for this week, you can't blame me if your brain doesn't want to cooperate. All right, so the reality was in 2007, there was a report, 1,200 reports of whales and boats colliding. That doesn't mean that the whales all died, right? All right. Here we go. Let's get after it. Let's get 3 of these for Berkeley to talk about. So Berkeley's making the assertion today that the whales are all dying of ship strikes. But it's clear knowledge. If you research 7,000 whales starved to death, if you research that, it's clear knowledge. All the major media already, including them, have already covered that particular story. So why is Berkeley talking to Poland? And Poland's translation is telling me Berkeley says, Portland area topsoil with 8,000 picocuries a kilogram of cesium from Fukushima. And there's 37 billion atoms in a curry. There could be 80 curries in a gram, let's say, of strontium. I think strontium is like 144, is it? Cesium is like 88 curries per gram or something, times 37 billion atoms. And every atom is capable of inflicting a mortal injury to a human or a species, which is over 10,000% higher than the highest levels found by UC Berkeley. Cesium-137, the highest yet levels in North California soil, hit post-Fukushima peak. French IRSN, the government itself, said there was 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air over Canada and the United States. Of cesium-137, cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet every second, each atom. So if you got a gram of it, you got 37 billion times 88 atoms per gram being released into the environment with a 300-year half-life. Each atom is pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. These are naturally released small fuel pools worldwide. All right, let's talk about one more. Former Department of Energy official criticizes UC Berkeley professor for comparing the ingestion of radioactive iodine to air travel. That was Kyle Vetter, who was in charge of the kelp watch for the California coastline. And he came out with the results before they even went out on the ocean, took samples, and then that whole thing was scuttled. Kyle Vetter, UC Berkeley professor of nuclear engineering, and his colleagues try to put the health risk in perspective by preparing their data with flying on an airplane, which is the most dishonest thing you can say. You can't conflate bananas and potatoes and walking sunshine and flying on airplanes, climbing mountains, and anything else like that, natural, harmless, stupid, everyday background radiation with anthropogenic, man-made radiation. You can't compare them, right? It's dishonest, disingenuous, and it should be criminal. All right, let's just talk about Fukushima for a few moments. This is reactor 3, also known as Medusa. It is ejecting its reactor core right out of the building and the fuel pools right out of the building. You could be talking about 9 reactor cores, and you're talking about a plutonium mixed oxide reactor, reclaim uranium plutonium. Radioactive fallout in its natural habitat. Map shows Fukushima fallout in the United States equal to the northeast and the Great Lakes, radiation doses rather in the northeast Great Lakes were equal to the west coast. This was a plume model of the Neptunium-239 dispersal, and that song we started off with tonight, James Lewis's more recent song, was alluding to the plutonium. And we know the plutonium killed all the animals and all the experiments through the United States government's Navy laboratory, Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico, with over 90 studies on beagle dogs and beagle puppies. So this is Neptunium-239. That decays to plutonium-239 every 2.5 days, 10 times, and then it's all decayed. But this is a continuous plume, which means it was continuously coming out. And this model is only based on 20 days, so this is far, far, far away from the total emissions. Let's just frame it that way for a second. The reactors are still hemorrhaging and they release fine particulates. So they release fine particulates when you blew up 8 or 9 reactor cores at the one time in a single building. There's 4 of these buildings with the same attribute. They've all lost their inventories. They successfully covered that up. And then they have sentenced me to purgatory with less than 200 views per video forever, apparently. Because I tell that particular story, so I'm not worthy. But they like to have me boxed in on YouTube, right, where they can keep an eye on everything. So anybody that's really interested in this topic will find me. And they will realize that I'm actually the good guy. I'm very honest, absurdly, brutally, flawly. That's a big flaw I have in my own personal life too, is I'm very honest. Most people want that in a relationship, I think. But not in my case, I don't imagine, because I'm too honest. That's a problem. Map shows Fukushima fault in the United States radiation dose in the northeast in the Great Lakes is equal to the west coast. So this plume model, after 25 days, is all decayed to plutonium. Plutonium got a 24,000-year, 239 with a 24,000-year half-life. There's 10 half-lives. So it's 250,000 years before that all decays to something else more hideous. Every time it changes to a different isotope, it could be something. No matter what it is, it's edited a man-made anthropogenic chain, so it's very harmful to everything with replicating cells. And there's no species on the body with an autoimmune trigger that can defend against it. Again, we're going to get to the material, but we have to lay out a foundation, because this is the whole week I won't have to keep doing this, right? But each show I'm going to refer people back to watch this first video, particularly this part here, to make sure, if they don't have a foundation, to make sure they got to reinforce their foundation. Unprecedented spike, 1,500 atoms of sulfur. This was sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. It was created by spraying seawater, because they didn't have any fresh water, and seawater is madness. They knew this in the 50s and 60s in the ocean testing, what would happen with the enormous heat. You would create these spherical balls. And so they were spraying them on 4 reactor buildings, which, by the way, officially, that's never happened. And which is one of the reasons we have our poll like it is tonight. Is it Japanese, it's Japan, International Atomic Energy Agency, the nuclear industry, the nuclear industry agencies, nuclear lobbying group, hiding Fukushima fuel pools meltdowns because it's beyond Earth's extinction level event? I got to realize I just done that poll an hour before we went live. I just woke up. I slept 4 times a day, by the way. And I almost went back to sleep then. It was like 9 o'clock. The show starts 10, and I was like, I'm burnt out. It's okay, though. The heat wave is finally over. It's just got to recover for a week. And the smoke has got the shit beat out of me. So this was covered up. Officially, that never happened. You can go down and download these pictures, by the way, at the International Atomic Energy Agency site, but it never happened. And August 24th, 2023, they moved the goalpost and made the statement that this didn't happen. So you had Japan, International Atomic Energy Agency, Taiwan, China, and South Korea got together and conspired to manipulate the planet into thinking only tritium was getting out, and that was released in a controlled manner. It's a really good show tonight, by the way. It's worth watching. Fukushima monthly followed higher now than 8 months ago. So think about this was only a 20-day model. The radioactive emissions from the site was worse 8 months later. And Fukushima monthly followed now 10 times higher than last September, which is probably 50 times higher than what you're looking at here, which is brutal because you just contaminated the entire planet with plutonium, which is causes 3 different tumors. Tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and the liver. And the biggest fatality will be from the skeleton tumors. And the skeleton tumors, of course, are a terrible way for someone to exit this world. It's okay if it was nuclear scientists or something. I got no issues with that, but not for everybody else in the species. In fact, I think all nuclear scientists, nuclear academics, pro-nuclear, should have to eat plutonium so we can be sure that's how they're going to leave this planet. The world will agree if you find out what's really going on, I can tell you that much. But at the end of the week, even if you're new here, you will agree. That's such a sad statement. So when you look at this building, that's reactor 4, that's reactor 3. When you look at reactor 4, do you say to yourself, this is what it looks like inside? Now, I created this picture 11 years ago. Like I got them now, and today I'm still showing you that picture, which is the videos. This is just a fraction of the media claiming that they're at the top of the building. So are they doing that because of that? Now remember, like they instead of gutting these contraptions, these things that are these stumps, which is what you would normally do all the way to the ground, they left the stumps so they can put these bizarre contraptions over it. And the only reason these 2 pictures exist in this capacity is because they boobied in around 2016, 2017. It's very unusual for Japan to release, even then, a high-quality picture of Fukushima's site. It was unheard of. And I was a noose hound, and so I wasn't on the ocean doing research expeditions at that time, but I was out there for a lot of that year, 4 or 5 months that year on the ocean. But I was lucky enough to get a picture that was so high quality I can zoom in on the reactors and extrapolate these pictures. Look at the debris there, and you can see damage over there. But the reality of it is you don't need that, but it's very useful. They put the contraptions over these, that's what it looks like under the contraptions. So when you read the nuclear stories, you're not going to see these pictures. and you're not going to see the German study of the contamination of the ocean, the Pacific Ocean by 2013. You're going to see this sanitized, non-Japan, because the United States have 70 identical reactors. And then the contamination of the ocean is not just the killer whales, it's all species. Now that model is based on cesium-137, which was a popular study. And there was a lot of studies. The French government was the best one showing it was a spike of 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima levels of cesium-137. Their numbers were at 1 million to 10 million atoms or times pre-Fukushima cesium-137 numbers. You got 1,000 fuel pools worldwide hemorrhaging radiation, all splitting atoms directly into the environment with no containment. So we're gonna end up at this point anyway, because you have 1,000 fuel pools worldwide splitting atoms, full of reactor cores from decades of reactors, and each fuel pool is going to boil off 120,000 liters. Each liter is going to be catastrophic. It's going to have grams and grams. A nuclear reactor core is a perpetual machine. It produces radioactive emissions perpetually for the rest of our lives. That's why, when you hear about the fuel is dangerous, there's many reasons why, but that's the one you'll never hear about. It's because the reason it's hot, they'll acknowledge that, but they won't acknowledge the reason why it's hot. The reason it's hot, they'll say it's because it came out of the reactor, which is completely dishonest. It's honest, but once it goes through the chain reaction, the very next day, forever now, it produces radioactive fallout. And still in the containment, kind of. But once you take it out after 14 months, a big chunk of it, and puts it in the fuel pool, there's no containment, and you're emitting those atoms. It looks like steam. And every day they have to replace 120,000 liters in every single one of the over 1,000 fuel pools worldwide. These are, it's absurd. Imagine, if this was a cartoon and we had cancer machines that looked like a power plant. And the emissions from the tall skinny stacks, if you got that in your body, you would get cancer or heart problems or liver problems or lung problems or respiratory or pituitary or thyroid or adrenaline or Alzheimer's or dementia and autism and diabetes and schizophrenia, and the list goes on. if you get that material in your body, no matter which species you are. Now, instead of a cartoon, say this is real and it's called a nuclear power plant and it's called a fuel pools, then you're in the program. Now you got a handle on what's really going on for almost 80 years. But every year you're putting more fuel in the fuel pools. I told you it was complicated. I told you it was convoluted. You didn't believe me, did you? Japanese author, we're still not even to the story yet. We're going to get there, though. Not that far away now. We're starting to get stuff. We're trying to lay a foundation, so no matter who you are, where you come from, what your level of knowledge is about this topic, or your skepticism or anything else, I'm going to win you over. There's no if, no maybes, no buts. Yeah, I got a squeaky voice. Yeah, some people don't even like the sound of my voice. And, have you ever found a perfect lecturer? Good for you. I don't do this stuff for popcorns, so people can sit back and have popcorn. I'm doing it to educate you so you can go to war too. Like James has gone to war. As a prime example. I always say that I wish there was thousands of bloggers. That was the idea of doing these shows, educating people. And eventually there's all kinds of people educated, right? But we pulled out a musician who didn't know he was a musician. That produced startling results. That's pretty special on its own, I would think. Extreme increase in mortality caused by cardiac diseases. The death rates might give the creeps to some people, not pro-nuclear, but people, actual people. It was up in a single month. Death rates were up 12,000. Now, there was 865,000 extra cancers in the first month. Not everybody got health care. Not everybody got diagnosed. Not everybody was going to get sick and die of cancer. There's all kinds of other diseases. You know, it's not everybody's going to be able to get a doctor, right? Because you had such a spike in illnesses and diseases immediately. It wasn't just like 865,000 extra cancers alone in Japan. You know, 1 in 5 or 2 in 5 males are born without no testicles. Or, I'm sorry, missing at least one testicle or no testicles. 14.2% of the children, neonates and infants, have congenital heart disease. They need open heart surgery. That's 4 out of 100,000. That's 14,200 out of every 100,000 newborns need open heart surgery across the entire country, post-Fukushima. There's 13,646 children with thyroid tumors of 2 centimeters, which is the length of, or the width of their thyroid gland, which is 2 by 3 centimeters. Adults is 3 by 5, which means they're producing radioactive hormones for the rest of their life. And you can't just have gamma without a bone seeker, so that means they're also producing radioactive stem cells for the rest of their lives. And I'm telling you right now, this is not a game. We're in real trouble. We're going to talk about the species per se, but you can flip that to humanity too right away, and all the other species. Radioactive iodine, the EPA, 131, there's 10 times more 132, 30 times more 133, 31 times more iodine, 129. The 132 to 133 are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid gland than the incredibly effective 131 is. And the 131 is unbelievably effective. Here we go again. So, exceed maximum containment levels permitted in drinking water, which means you should have abandoned Pennsylvania. 3,300% above the federal drinking water standards. I expect more radiation in the rainwater. There was serious panic in that first month. But they managed, they had a big tsunami to hide everything away behind. These are 2 pictures that any academic on the planet in the nuclear industry would have looked at and said the fuel pools are gone. And the reactor cores. Not maybe, not the containment shell, not the hydrogen explosions. These were pressure explosions because you're at 1,000 pounds per square inch as it is. Air samples in Tokyo 270 times more contaminated with cesium-137 than global weapons fallout peak. Over 400 atoms a kilogram. So a Becquerel is a pulse of energy in every direction. The BQ you see up there, 4,000 BQ per kg kilogram. So the BQ is the explosion that is created by the atom. You put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle and you can't see it. But only one of them in your body doesn't know what it is and attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells. Eventually builds a sarcophagus around it. We call it a tumor. It doesn't stop there. But at the same time, when it explodes, it's killing cells, chromosomes, DNA in every direction. And your body tries to repair that every second and build a sarcophagus around the source. That could take 20, 30, 40 years of white blood cells. So there's a permanent cause, an instant cause and reaction that's permanent from the anthropogenic man-made radiation in your body. And so for every white blood cell me or an animal or a whale or a bird or animals or whatever is producing, we're going to delete a red blood cell which carries oxygen nutrition. And because you're destroying, doing so much destruction every second with the Becquerel, with the pulse of energy, per kilogram means it's in your body. Over 4,000 atoms per kilogram of cesium. This was the fog in Tokyo, 36 million people, metropolitan Tokyo. It never disappears and never will because it's not just cesium. Cesium they can find easy. And it's a terrible isotope. But it's not the worst one. The biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rods is curium isotopes, which needs lead shielding 20 times thicker than the plutonium. And the plutonium is not a game. It's not natural. It's 100% man-made. And no species have an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. And it's well known, its attributes are incredibly well known through just heartless and gutless assaults upon the most vulnerable animals in dogs. Like the beagle dog is a very loving dog. And it's not going to bite the scientist, that's what he used it in the beak nose, right? It's disgusting. And how many pets did he kidnap, right, for these laboratories? The numbers will terrify you if you know the truth. Children with over 11 atoms a kilogram start to see heart problems. So 11 atoms, you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. So how are you going to protect your loved ones from 11? How are you going to avoid 11 in their diet? This was a study based on Chernobyl's. Look up the documentaries on YouTube of Chernobyl Hearts. It's a foundation that goes down and takes care of the abandoned children from Chernobyl, to the best of their ability in order to get them open heart surgery and bring them some relief. The nuclear industry refuses to contribute or help the victims. And they waste absurd billions every year as worldwide. They won't help any of the victims. It's a troubling industry that knows what it's doing and revels in it on top of that, and revels in the secrecy of it. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 atoms a kilogram of cesium-137, which is nothing compared to the curium isotopes, which is the biggest byproduct of a radioactive fuel rod. How are you going to avoid it? It's not just cancer, it's absurd mental health issues. Once you compromise the immune system with so many white blood cells, you're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were completely, for millions of years, harmless and innocuous and benign. Now your immune system, your body is completely vulnerable to any kind of pathogens that your body had a normal defense for, now no longer can defend against it. Irreversible, which like the flus, right, could kill you because your immune system is compromised. Hence the reason he pulled off the scam they did a few years ago. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 atoms a kilogram of cesium-137. So 13,646 out of 38,200 children with thyroid tumors of 2 centimeters. These are absurd numbers. It used to be 1 in a million. These are absurd numbers. Radiation data from the Seattle survey withheld by the Feds for National Security. Really, the radiation data you paid for that. that group they're talking about, job, the reason they were created was to find radioactive fallout as a threat and warn the population so they can stay indoors. And you know, you've seen the old shelter in your basement videos from back in the day. To do all of that stuff, right? You gave them the authority, you gave them the monetary, you gave them the education, you gave them pensions, you gave their children's bursaries so they can get jobs, get educations, have the same jobs later. You've done everything right. And then when you finally get radioactive fallout, they don't hesitate to cut your entire country's throat. What a betrayal, eh? What a disgusting betrayal. And call it national security purposes, because the nuclear industry has a stranglehold on your country, and they'll drown everybody rather than themselves drowning. And that's what they've done to you. Cesium-137 immediately damages the heart muscles, by the way. So it doesn't take 30 or 40 years to manifest. It can show up the next day, and it does, and it did. Does that look like a 190-foot building, reactor 4? And you can see over in the corner, you can see over in the corner, I got 2 screens on my side, right? I'm just too lazy to move myself over there. I decided to take up precious time and do this. I'm still going to have to move myself over to make this work the way I want it to. So, 190-foot building. By the way, the reactor cores and the fuel pools are at the top of the building. This is almost the bottom of the building. So this is the ground right here where my hand is to. Great. And that's exposed part of the building. That's gutted. That was ejected part of the building, right? Reactor 4. So that's supposed to be a 190-foot building. Here's what it looked like over there. That's the other side of the building, by the way. So this was all built off-site, and it doesn't physically touch the stump of reactor 4. This is where they built a contraption over it and then pretended that they were in the building getting fuel out of a pool that doesn't even exist. And they done it by putting this contraption right there. They built it off-site and assembled it, mostly with remote control, but they did have a homeless and destitute working there. When they died, they were ashed and put in incinerators, and the ashes was given to the local monks that finally came out. I think there was around 800 they acknowledged homeless people they done that to. Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan. People should stay home, immediately take off their clothing. That's what America and Canada should have done. Everybody else should have done. Well, first off, the nuclear industry shouldn't exist because it has that particular attribute. And today, the current administration in Taiwan is telling the Taiwanese people this didn't even happen. And the Taiwanese people are powerless to even protest against it. In fact, they went out and protested tritium instead of plutonium. A couple years ago, parachuting with X-rays and CAT scans are meaningless. Inhaling the particles increases radiation exposure by a factor of 1 trillion. So for the birds and mammals and animals and insects, it's the same thing, but that's even worse for them. They don't have a shelter to hide into. And the radioactive fallout from reactors is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. And then when you get it in your body, whether you drink it or inhale it or consume it or from showers absorbed into your body, the whole story is madness. It's madness. So if the toxicity is considered 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison, and the effects are exposures from inhaling it, breathing it, consuming it is a factor of 1 trillion compared to external doses. And you're not getting away from the external doses. The external doses will destroy your chromosomes, your DNA too. Ambassador Murata writes to the UN Secretary General, it is no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the whole world depends on the number 4 reactor to your left. What about Medusa? How come they don't get no loving? And when you look at the reactor, does that look like they've salvaged, I don't need to ask you that question if you've ever been around here before, if you know the basics, but sometimes I feel I do, because how are they able to get away with this for so long? We've been here the whole time, and we've done unbelievable research expeditions. How much to the show? Is it right there? Right there. Okay. Let me delete everything I've already covered. And then I can find my way back if it gets lost here. Here we go. So let's get started on the show. We still got a bunch of these to get through after. We're going to be doing this stuff all week, the die-offs. But we're laying a foundation for the rest of the week so we don't have to do this every show. Climate change likely played a role in 40% drop in the Pacific gray whale. The word likely, first off, is a conjecture, it's an opinion, right? And then climate change, which is arguably, and I can argue successfully, as 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry, pulsing energy at the speed of light. It bioaccumulates and never goes away. The media is not pretending they're at reactor 4 because of climate change. They're pretending because Fukushima is behind the die-offs. Okay? All right? Scientists, which has absolutely no credibility anymore, certainly anything to do with universities. One primary suspect is food scarcity. They won't just come out and say starvation. So this one, the population this was 2019, 2022. The numbers now are around 52%. That's there's 14,000 dead. This was 10,350, I think it was. Yeah, 10,350. The whale population reached a high of 27,000 in 2016 and has since dropped to, right, which contradicts the story we started off with, by the way. They just say whatever's convenient for them, for the most part. 10,350. Now it's 14,000 dead. I'm sorry, this is gray whales? Yeah. I was thinking humpback whales. My apologies. So gray whales are now at 14,000 dead and 13,000. The 13,000 that are alive were emaciated last year on the migratory route and had no surviving babies when they got to Baja, California. And now they left Baja, California, they're headed north for the opposite migratory, 12,000-mile migratory route, and they're still severely emaciated, and they're showing up dead everywhere. And the media is trying to call it ship strikes and entanglement. And it could be true for some of it, but not in the capacity that explains the mass emaciation. They're not emaciated. It takes many, well, it could take almost 2 years to die from starvation because they have 12 inches of blubber. And you can check the thing with the nuclear industry is you can look at the history of it, and then you can correlate that with the mass species die-offs and the temperature, the weather abnormalities and everything else. The so-called climate change is emblematic of the emissions from the nuclear industry for 80 years. That's the scientists in my eyes, because that's all I see them do, right? Remember this story? Deep sea octopus garden off California coast, the largest known octopus gathering in the world. It's a fascinating story. 20,000 female octopuses gather to tend their eggs in frigid water 2 miles deep. It's a pretty good defense because not a lot of species, because you're not in the visible light zone, right? The first 100 feet is the highly visible light zone. That's the most photoplankton going on. That's where you have all the algae too. That's where you have the majority of species concentrated. The visible, highly visible species anyway. And the universities have endless money, and they do stuff like this. So they kind of give you some street creds, right? Oh, that's pretty cool. But the same university will send their scientists that'll do this. Insect decline directly linked to human activities. Okay. Identified significant declines in insect populations across Europe. So the insect decline, you can see a steady decline, a massive, unprecedented decline since Fukushima. And human activities is Fukushima. In recent years, concerns about declining insect abundance and diversity have increased in many regions of Europe, North America, post-Fukushima. All of these stories have something in common. The species die-offs are all post-Fukushima. You'll always hear these connotations, never seen nothing like it. It's extraordinary. Who would have seen this coming in? Anybody in the nuclear industry would have. Giant sinkhole found in China contains the untouched ancient forest. It's a pristine, preserved ancient forest. Well, I don't know if it's 100% preserved post-Fukushima. As anything as far as I can tell, there's nothing on the planet that's not significantly affected by Japan's emissions, which were the biggest emissions and still ongoing. Turkey's largest lake is drying up because of drought, leaving behind stinky, polluted mud and causing a bird massacre. So one of the attributes of like Chernobyl and radioactive fallout in general, anywhere localized, would be you kill the bacteria, the fungus in the forest, in the meadows, and by proxy then you kill the biota, because the biota is dependent upon the bacteria and the fungus. All plants are dependent upon bacteria and fungus through millions of generations. And so we're in a new era where they don't have bacteria and fungus. And so the litter, the foliage that would normally be broken down, doesn't get broken down into nutrients and everything else and redistributed, recycled back into the cycle of life, the soup of life, because of the fungus and the bacteria's vulnerability to radioactive fallout. And that soaks up the water. So now the earth doesn't soak up water. So we talked about this a long time ago, post-Fukushima. Ultimately, down the road, what do you foresee would be flash floods, because the earth is not going to be soaking up water. You would see increased temperatures because the earth is soaking up heat. And you would see the biodiversity melt away right in front of your eyes. Instead of over eons, it would happen in just a few decades. And so a lot of people, when they're traveling at normal altitudes, won't get any insect damage or insect on the front of their vehicles unless they're in very different isolated areas. And South America is still holding on, but not what it was pre-Fukushima numbers. How many whales are found dead on UK beaches? So that story was 2016. That was 2023. This is 2016. This is what we see from scientists now. It's absurd. We see this over and over and over. I forgot about a lot of stuff. So when I go back and see these headlines, I get kind of blown away by it. This was you can see how clearly the whale is emaciated, right? This is, I think it's a sperm whale, don't quote me. Yeah, 5 sperm whales died and washed up in the beaches east of England within days of each other. We've never seen that pre-Fukushima, for instance. Whales are stranded on UK beaches at a rate of more than 5 a month, according to the recent figure. There were 66 reports. This is a 2016 story. Starvation. And so all the whale species ultimately is starvation. That's ship strikes. But and I mean, like they're coming out now. Literally every story will it won't say it was a ship strike, but they'll put that in there. Oh well, most whales die of ship strikes. So somebody has control over that narrative. Typically, it's the International Atomic Energy Agency. Because most of the media now is owned by big groups. We don't see any dissenting voices whatsoever now. There was some originally the first couple of years. Lack of recent feeding. No. For a whale to become emaciated takes months and months and months. And in fact, you know, a lot of these whales, the theory was back in the day that you would see around 1,000 atoms per kilogram in whales because of the food that they're eating. And we have quite a few headlines from back in those days. But this is what we're getting from scientists. This is what we're getting from academics. This is what we're getting from the lunatic media. The bizarre, the creepy and bizarre media. And this over and over and over, this routine. 8 dead sperm whales, 2016, found on a German beach. So tonight's show is about laying the foundation. This is clearly starvation. And you're not getting good pictures, right? These are not very high quality pictures, unfortunately. But you can see the indentation where the rib cages are. You can see the peanut head, even stilled in, right? Washed up on a German beach just weeks after 12 sperm whales were found dead on other sites on the North Sea just after 4 had showed up on another beach, right? They like squid mostly. They're deep divers. And they have that iconic shape to them, don't they? 5 sperm whales stranded on Dutch beach, 2016 also. Starvation. It took a few years, but they started showing up. A rare mass stranding. Not so rare anymore, is it? Pre-Fukushima, you'd never hear anything like this. The odds of finding 2 dead whales on the same beach, pre-Fukushima, you had better chances of getting hit by a Soviet satellite in the next 3 seconds. We're not sure why they beached. One theory is they were ill and moved to shallow water, and they called out to their fellow pod members who followed it in. Well, if that was true, then you would have seen many examples of that throughout history. We've never seen it pre-Fukushima. But now we know they actually died of starvation. The consensus was ultimately they died of starvation. Animal welfare manager, my goodness. You're talking about whales. You ain't managing whales. Said it was a rare to see whale beach in the area. There's by 2019 in the United Kingdom, this was 2016, there was over 1,000 covert beak whales found in different stages of decomposition, which I've never even seen in the United Kingdom before. There was over 1,000 found, which is considered 10% of what probably would have died. So they estimated there was 10,000 covert beak whales had died in just a single year. And because we covered it when it was happening, and the consensus then, the majority of it was starvation, right? They were still trying to blame some unentanglement. And the problem was, you had so many, and you never seen it before. You never even seen that whale there before. But this is what I see now when I think scientists. This is the only thing I think I see now when I see scientists. I don't know, that's different, okay. Sperm whale. 2 more sperm whales wash up dead on a Dutch beach. in a rare North Sea beach, not so much rare anymore. And you can see the peanut head. You can see the streamline on the body, clear emaciation. So the story goes back post-Fukushima. You can trace the explosion of die-offs. You can trace the explosion of weather events, forest fires, flash floods. You can trace the loss of the insects. You can trace the die-off of all the bird species. Right from, say, 2014, 2015, when you start seeing hundreds of thousands showing up dead on their migratory route, the consensus was always starvation, which we know Fukushima broke the food chain, and we know it takes quite a few years for it to manifest everywhere else, but it will. You should have seen this planet. Look up videos of nature pre-nuclear industry. It'll blow your mind how many beautiful species were on this planet. Now it seems like nothing ever lived on the planet. The planet is dying, literally. Thanks to 80 years of emission and pulse events like Japan. A group like this is even rarer, said Boone, adding, the North Sea is too shallow for the large, deep-diving animals. Yeah, it is. They came there to get up on a beach in desperation because they couldn't swim anymore, right? They need to keep their blowhole out of the water. That's their defense mechanism. 4 dead sperm whales wash up on the British beaches. And a 3rd dead whale appeared on Sunday. It's 10 years since the northern bottlenose whale swam up in the Thames in central London, bringing thousands to the riverbanks to see an extremely rare sight. But that whale didn't die. The whale died during a rescue attempt. I'm sorry, it did die. 10 years. So, which was probably one of the only whales they can look back in history and say that showed up there. Now they always got whales going up there that are emaciated and dying. Study examines the hard reality that no pollen means no seeds. And now that we're killing off the pollinators because we're bringing back radioactive pollen from the plants and destroying the colonies. Experts blame El Nino for dead sea creatures on Chile's beach. Dead whales, salmon, sardines, and clams washing up on the shores lately has made them a lot less picturesque, and scientists believe El Nino. There was, what year was this story? 2016. I think that's the same year where they had 300, we'll get to that, 300 plus baleen whales. We'll get to it in a minute, hopefully. The marine deaths reached the shores of Santa Maria Island where cuttlefish have washed up in 1,000. Cuttlefish are extraordinary. They go to this one place to reproduce. 8,000 metric tons of sardines washed up at the mouth. Thousands of dead clams piled up on the coastline in Chile. Early years, surge in algae to water choked an estimated 40,000 metric tons of salmon. Now, currently, there was 3,500 sea lions showed up there, and they tried to say it was bird flu, but the animals, instead of being 1,000 pounds, were around 80. They were completely emaciated. Equivalent to 12% of Chile's annual production of fish, 40,000 metric tons. Of salmon, 40,000 metric tons of salmon. It's hard to comprehend that number, by the way, I bet. I'm going to bring up the scale for you. 40,000 metric tons, which is 2,200 pounds. Is 88 million pounds of salmon. 88 million pounds of salmon. In fact, the bivalve populations such as clams have never been exposed like this to algae. Now, the problem with shellfish is they bioaccumulate, because they're filter feeders, they'll bioaccumulate radiation, isotopes, at a rate of 125,000 times more than a fish would, because they're filter feeders, right? So stay away from clams and mussels and scallops and abalones and stuff like that. And as sad as that to say, it's a health risk that you don't want to take because of the bioaccumulation. It's insane to take the chance. They're there, but because they're filter feeders, you're very vulnerable compared to a fish. You can't avoid radiation, so if you're going to eat fish, eat fish. But, you don't have to go overdo it, but don't be afraid of it compared to clams. Be terrified of it. Shellfish, be terrified of it. March 24, 2016, Japan's 4 whaling ships returned from the Antarctic Sea on Thursday with 333 dead mink whales. Imagine covering the whole planet in radioactive fallout, starting a mass species die-off, and then having the arrogance to go out and hunt the whales. 230 females, most of which were pregnant. They were selling them in vending machines like everything else in Japan. How does Japan even justify poisoning our entire planet? Dead whales beach in Chile, climate change suspected. 337 whales beached in the largest stranding ever. So in 2016, I think this is, 2016, that was the biggest stranding of any species of whales ever seen. Now we're like, post-Fukushima, that's normal. And like I said again, right, and recently there's 3,480 or something sea lions, severely emaciated, that they try to conflate with bird flu. It's despicable. Now, back in these days, you never heard the word bird flu. Now they're going to tell you, like, the caveman died of the bird flu, right? The saber-toothed tiger died of the bird flu. And a tree dies in the forest, it died of bird flu, Dana. We're scientists. We know what we're talking about. So these were the sea whales, SEI. They were found beached by scientists. One of the biggest whale strandings, and that's one of the biggest, it's the biggest, period. 337. But the pictures, you can see that sharp spine. That's starvation. The largest die-off ever recorded. Same as the humpback whales, they were dying of starvation. Tragic and shocking. It was in the middle of nowhere. So they found 337, which meant there could have been over 3,000, 4,000 died. They are large bluish gray whales that grow 64 feet and weigh 50 tons. They're huge creatures. As one of the fastest species, they can swim up to 31 miles per hour and they can live anywhere from 50 to 70 years. And Fukushima put an end to that stuff. The scientific expedition counted 305 bodies and 32 skeletons. So different stages of decomposition again. They died of starvation. One guy, because he comes from a university, he's going to cut your throat. They probably died at sea. We don't know exactly where, but they didn't just die by stranding, really? Well, that's 2016. We're in 2025. Yeah, they died by stranding. They didn't do this pre-Fukushima. They didn't see any of these attributes pre-Fukushima. It was part of the team. The scientific expedition counted. The scientific expedition. That's such a joke to suggest this is a scientific expedition. I'm supposed to be using that screen so I can do stupid, silly stuff like that. It's something. It's stop doing that, Dana. Whale CSI. Why sperm whales are washing up dead on the British shore. I don't need a whale CSI for that. They're dying from starvation. They're a genius. Slicing cleanly through 2 inches of skin and blubber. It's supposed to be 12 inches of blubber, by the way. It may have just come too close to shore, said the scumbag. A mass stranding of sperm whales has puzzled scientists. But as I showed you earlier, this was happening all over the coastline in 2000 of the Atlantic coastlines in 2016. It wasn't just that one spot. With 6 now washed up on the beaches, the biggest in a century. That was the biggest ever. Period. At least 29 have been found on the coast of the United Kingdom, Netherlands, and Germany. Yeah, they all got too close to shore. It's just magic post-Fukushima. That's what whales do now. You hear about Fukushima? Come on over to the coastline. I don't want no one to hear us. Yeah, they had a meltdown. What? Hey, hang on, I'm beached. 2 inches of blubber. The skin is usually more than 2 inches. May have just come too close to shore, Dana. What else could it be? Yeah, they're skinny and emaciated, but can't be dying of starvation. Another likely cause of the death is the whales simply got lost. Because that's normal, right? There's a long history of that. Of course there's not, right? They either come too close to shore or they got lost or a little bit of both, Dana. So take care. All 29 of them came a little too close or got lost. It's normal after Fukushima for whales to get lost. Whale deaths near Anchorage, Alaska. Glacier Bay prompts an investigation. What is... My mouse goes to sleep sometimes. I can't figure out where it's to, and I keep forgetting to go in and turn it off. I love this one. Well, that was an emaciated animal when it died, by the way. You can tell by the bulk of it, right? Bears, brown bears, and babies. So both mamas, right? That's the mama with 3, and that's the mama with 2 cubs. That's a pretty crazy picture. You don't see those pictures too often. That's the cycle of life. They would have died too. Researchers are trying to determine what caused death of 3 large whales found along the Alaska coastline within a single week. Is that 2016? Yeah, 2016. These are great stories because they show you that this was happening post-Fukushima within a few years. The whale had diminished fat reserves, which may mean it wasn't consuming enough food, Dana. Diminished fat reserves, you say? You sure you didn't mean emaciated? Oh, come on now, you meant emaciated. Diminished fat reserves. Just come out and say it, man. The whale was emaciated. He was rotten scientist. Noah, it's so difficult to call anybody that you hired an official. They're the furthest thing from an official. Don't know if these recent deaths are related to dozens of whales' deaths in the Gulf of Alaska in 2015 were labeled an unusual mortality event. Every time you hear the word researcher, all you think is scumbags now. All you think is degenerate scum. You used to covet them before Fukushima. Now you know they're just disgusting parasites. Pack of killer whales in the east coast of Canada jostles the family's boats off the rock. The 67-year-old retired fisherman never seen an orca in east coast waters, and suddenly 5 or 6 of them were nudging his little 15, 16-foot boat. He thought they were being playful, but as the boat swayed back and forth, he started to worry what would happen if he landed in the water. Because that's what they do. They'll make the ice floes tip the seal into the water. They were starving, looking for food, and humans were looking good. Hundreds of sea lions wash up dead in Chile. Now, they didn't mention the word bird flu back then, did they? Now they got 3,480 or something, 3,500, that are severely emaciated. If it shows you the pictures, you might cry. You'll never say it's a sea lion. You say, what the hell is that tiny speck on the sand? And they were saying bird flu to scumbags. Marine researchers found more than 100 dead sea lions, most of them newborns, washed ashore. It's happened along the entire coast of northern Chile and in Peru, our neighbors to the north. We could be talking about hundreds of sea lions washing up on shore dead in the entire... If you got hundreds, then that meant another 2,000 died at sea. Concerned that the vast majority of dead sea mammals are newborn, though so juveniles and adults were found dead too. Still had in medical course, they were abandoned right away. There was no food to feed them, so that's typical. Food sources are blamed for the deaths. Takes them forever to come out and tell you the truth. It's like trying to get a poop tool. It's like trying to pull a tooth out of an alligator. They're just squirming and rolling. No! The warm water does not have the same nutrients of phytoplankton that the cold water has. Phytoplankton is important because it feeds the sardines and the anchovies the sea lions thrive on. In other words, sea lions seem to be starving to death, because the food chain has been disrupted. All right. And now I got that blues song on my head still all night long. I want to pick up the guitar. Yeah, some heat wave we had last week. Holy shit, it was just too much. Even the week before, you can see I was fading pretty rough. And so yesterday was a cool day, but it was smoky. And the day before, we're supposed to get rain tonight. That's going to knock a lot of that smoke out of here, knock down those fires. I don't know if it'll knock down the fires because the fires have been burning for 3 weeks. So they're burning deep. There's no water in the ground, right? So the fires are deep. They got 5 float planes. And I was right under them yesterday where they were crossing the road. I stopped there and tried to get some pictures. Right over your head, right? They got 5 of them apparently and 5 helicopters. 2 of them are the Black Hawk helicopters from the States are here. And they can carry, I think, 10,000 pounds of water. So that's probably 5 times what the other helicopters can haul. And they got infrared, so they can find the deep, hot spots, hopefully, and get... And I doubt it enough that the ground crew can get in there and finish the job anyway. But cause the forest fires are burning deep too. And because the foliage and tinder and the litter hasn't broken down, because we killed the bacteria and the fungus and the biota, then that stuff picks up and just drops 10, 100,000 feet down. There's big chunks of fires falling. That would normally never exist with a normal ecosystem pre-nuclear industry. Let me find what I'm looking for first. Just give me 1 second. Here we go. It is madness, though, how much this industry has lied for 80 years. And they've been telling the same lie for 80 years, over and over and over and over. The warm water does not have the same nutrients of phytoplankton. So we'll pick back up at that once this was a recent story from Peru, which is the neighbor to Chile. Explosion of sea lion deaths in Peru. Amid the deadly, so they're not saying, but the connotation is there, amid the deadly flu outbreak. This was 2 years ago, March 6th. The deadly flu outbreak. So they're trying to blame, at that time they were trying to blame all the gannets and other species that were mass die-off on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. The colonies all failed, and they were trying to blame it on avian influenza, which has been around for millions of generations, right? Of the birds, but they've never ever been susceptible to it. Now they're susceptible to it because of their immune system is compromised and the food chain is broken. So that could happen. They most likely died of starvation. We covered that extensively and had done some local research expeditions. There was over 1 million gannets and common mers that had showed up emaciated, starved to death. just before the Ghana colonies all failed. Okay, so explosion of sea lion deaths in Peru, and then the connotation is bird flu outbreak. Now the pictures are going to be hard to look at. There's two sets of pictures. Here we go. That's, if you told me that was a sea lion, only the fins would, I would say to you, well, that's a sea lion, but that's the size of a seal at best, or a very small seal. That's emaciation. That's not bird flu. That takes a long time to go from 700, 800, 900,000 pounds to 80, 90 pounds, right? So there was 3,487 sea lions. I got a tendency to say 3,500, round it off. You don't like to assume me. No, don't do that. So here's the next picture. I'm going to be brutal. So they're saying this sea lion. Now, if I seen that on the beach, I would never know it was a sea lion. I'd hope it was a nuclear scientist or something, but like that one there, not that. Paper suit guys. So this is not bird flu. But I was interested that the media had done that. This is severe starvation. This is the worst starvation. I used to dive with sea lions all the time. I never did like sea lions. I love seeing them on the rocks, but I don't want to work with them underwater alongside of me. They mess with you too much, right? I can never control my fear because they get aggressive. So one of the signs of aggression for a sea lion, the biggest sign of aggression, is they'll go down deep and they'll blow bubbles at each other. And so I'm down there, whether air hose or tanks, for 6 hours a day blowing bubbles. Then they come along, oh, you want to fight, do you? I'm like, no. But look at the size of that creature, it's nothing. So when you look at the pictures that they're showing people, this one of the pictures that they're saying, right, and you can see they got it highlighted, amid raising cases of bird flu infection. The average person who's reading this might think that's bird flu. So when they see an emaciated animal on the beach, right, they'll call up and say, we got they tell their friends and families and everybody else, that's bird flu. That's the idea of doing that. So it's called social engineering. Okay, back to this story. The warm water does not have the same nutrients of phytoplankton. So phytoplankton is not just like microscopic plants. It's also all the eggs and larvae and tiny microscopic animals in the soup of life. So all the species, how do you put it? Like the oysters might lay 11 million eggs. That's considered phytoplankton until it gets to a certain stage. The same thing with octopus eggs, or same thing with codfish eggs, or herring eggs, or anchovies eggs, or whatever, right? Any species out there, starfish eggs, milk, sperm, and everything else, all of that's considered the phytoplankton, the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain, until it gets to a certain stage. In other words, sea lions are seen to be starving there because the food chain has been disrupted. Now that's Chile. That's right alongside of Peru. Peru is where, this is 2016, the dead emaciated sea lions I showed you was 2023, March the 6th. When I talk about convoluted and complicated, that's not really the word. It's so hard to tell these stories. And I've been at it a long time, and it's just torture. It's literally torture, trying to put these shows together. It wears you out, eh? You got to take into consideration that no matter who comes to my show, and they've never been here before, they have a really good chance, if they can put up with my squeaky voice long enough, they have a really good chance of wrapping their mind around this story in a very short order, where on your own you would never, I'm not going to say you'd never be able to do it. You have to be pretty determined, but you could do it. But there's very few people got that kind of drive to go out and flush out all the lies. All right, I have the unfortunate luck to have a deep knowledge of this. Because all the universities were posting their courses online. And I started around 2000, 2001 or something. After that, they started showing up online, all the courses. I got addicted to that stuff. I got addicted to nuclear. And I eventually accumulated over 7,000 lectures on nuclear. And of course, along that journey, I discovered inconsistencies, let's put it that way, outrageous lies, let's put it that way. And so eventually I became vehemently anti-nuclear. But I was also had a really unique education through all the major shakers and movers. They also found the bodies of, I was a commercial diver for many, many years too, right? I have thousands and thousands of hours on the ocean floor, so I have incredible insight. They also found the bodies of 2 other animals, possible whales who had died recently. They blamed those deaths in a disruption in the food chain, nutritionally compromised, disruptions in food chain. It's called starvation, also known as emaciation. The news is not so bad for South American fur seals, which seem to be surviving the disruption of the food chain. The South American fur seals, that was 2016. Now they had to walk back those words by now. Unlike the other affected species, these sea lions are able to swim much deeper and find fish that are not present in the shallow water. So now they're suggesting that the sea lions in Peru can't dive. Good job. Only the media. And beluga deaths continue to demystify. The St. Lawrence is down in the Atlantic. For several years, marine researchers have been concerned about a high mortality of beluga whales in the St. Lawrence. Out of 14 carcasses found last year, there were pregnant females, 3, and 6 were newborn calves. In beluga, it affects the thyroid gland. They're talking about flame retardant. Nothing that affects the thyroid gland. And you'll find flame retardant in everybody. Every species out there, unfortunately. But you'll find radiation in everybody, too. And radiation pulses energy every second. So in the thyroid will start producing radioactive hormones for the rest of your life, for the species' life. There's a scientist. Oh boy, this will get me my PhD. Then I can get a job and screw over humanity for 50 years, and my children can get that job and carry on my evil. I had to do it, didn't I? Had to touch my glasses. Make a mess every time. I cleaned them up real good just before I went live. I spit on them the whole 9 yards. I got them shiny. And then I had to bring my cup all the way up that time because it's low on water. I'm too stupid to go out and get some fresh water, which I might have to do in a minute. You need that cold water, little bits right there. All that smoke we had. Might never get this clean again now. Could take 10 minutes. There's a certain technique that doesn't work every time. Until you got certain criteria met. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So we're trying to show post Fukushima how this played out, and it's going to probably take 2 weeks to get through what I got here, and that's what we're going to be doing for the next 2 weeks. Because that's the only way I'm going to get through it, if I just dive in and trying to keep the narrative straight. The best way to do it, if you got a lot of material, you do show after show after show of it, and then you can stay on top of the narrative and keep the story, that momentum. 7 years ago, a mystery absence of humpback whales in Hawaii as experts scratching their heads. So this is before they acknowledged their 7,000 whales died. It was interesting because they used the word starvation, right? I showed you that at the beginning. More than 10,000 humpback whales make their migration route, winter journey from Alaska to Hawaii. They didn't show up. Humpback whales have been slow to return to Hawaii as December usually marks the start of the season. One theory was something like this happened as whales increased. And this was Ed Lyman, a Maui-based marine biologist, response coordinator for the sanctuary. It's a product of their success, says the crazy man. Turns out 7,000 of them starved to death. But that's like, you get cancer and then you get invited to go, the typical person gets invited to go to the Mayo Clinic to be treated by cancer. All their friends will go, my God, you're so lucky. But the reality of it is you're not coming back. The Mayo Clinic will kill you. And the people that work there are the first ones to come out and apologize for the nuclear industry. It's just, how the hell did we ever get here? Because nuclear has never been challenged. The nuclear industry has never been challenged with an educational program. The plankton-eating animals, with more animals, they're competing against each other for that food resource. So he's kind of alluding that there could be starvation involved, but he called it a product of success. I think is unconscionable, but that's the people that'll get those particular jobs. The job he's got is one of the government jobs, right? Let me see. A Maui-based marine biologist, response coordinator for the sanctuary. So that's a government job. And he put out a garbage can diagnosis. And then ultimately acknowledges they're running out of food. With more animals, they're competing against each other for that food resource, which is a lunatic assertion in a massive ocean. It's a lunatic assertion. What he's really saying is there's less food. 81 whales washed ashore, and I think this was India. 81 of them. I can't believe they didn't eat them in India. That's a bit surprising. 147 were stranded. There were rumors claiming the beaching could be due to climate change, which, like, if you get a speeding ticket and they ask you why you're speeding, just say climate change. If you get dirt on your clothes, just tell your cleaner it was climate change. It's a garbage. What is climate change, though? It's 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry. Every atom is pulsing energy for the rest of your life. Carbon doesn't pulse energy. Carbon is more birds, more insects, more whales, more puppies, more babies, more plants, more trees, more flowers, more food, more life, more insects. The strandings of these whales is rare. They don't swim close to the coast. If you recall a similar incident during the nuclear testing era, when 147 whales were stranded on the beach. Yeah. All the bigger, like when they always refer back to the 70s and 60s and 80s when there was these incidents. And what you discovered was the radioactive fallout was catastrophic back then from the nuclear war. They called testing. You know, the Soviet Union's biggest bomb was equal to almost 4,000 Nagasaki bombs going off at one time. Does anybody really believe the radioactive fallout had no effect worldwide? Is anybody that gullible? Apparently the whole planet is. Nobody that comes here regularly is not, but here you go. Thank God we got scientists is all I can say. Woohoo! I feel so much safer. Not. Dead sperm whale found in China. Zhengzhou, Hong Kong. Death's not believed to be connected. No connection. There were 3 dead dolphins found in the area beach this week. Another was found in the St. John's River. And what was this picture there? I can't remember. Oh yeah, they were trying to blame it on wind power. It's killing all the whales. They're still doing that today, though, aren't they? 2016. Carcasses graffitied after 5 dead sperm whales as big as a bus each wash up on the English beaches. Warning, graphic photos. These are emaciated. This is severe emaciation you're looking at. Oh, their stomachs were empty. It's not that simple. In if their stomachs are empty, that's not going to kill them right away. It could take 7, 8, 9 months to die of starvation for a whale because it has 12 inches of blubber. It had no blubber. Their stomachs were empty on top of that. Yeah, they always are post-Fukushima. Dead humpback whale washes up in the same area, Nova Scotia's coast, where scores of fish are mysteriously dying. December 2016. Mysterious fish that appeared to have spread to new... Mysterious fish kill that appeared to have spread to new species, jumping from species to species. Ha ha! That's emaciation. That's like severe emaciation. That is catastrophic, unprecedented emaciation. Hard cases, but I got to get some more ice water. My throat is shut. I'm going to put on that same song we started off with tonight because I like it and I'm in control. And I put a link. I don't know if I put a link in there last night. I'm not sure if there's a link in there tonight. I'm going to play that song. And I'll be back before the song is over. I'm not going to play the whole song, but I'm going to play the song. And I got to go get some fresh ice water because I'm just dried out.
He chewing on that metal, says it don't do harm. Plutonium in his pocket, like it's a lucky charm. But talk don't kill what's crawling, and them atoms at your bones. Said the dead don't count. Yeah, said the dead don't count. Ain't gone by morning. They cross your name out. He got fruit on the table. Talk about Denver sky. But Cuvier run that river. Don't look, don't lie. They still lie to you with a smile full of steam. They still lie to you, but the ground still screams. Shrink the cord to trick you. Call it safe, call it trim. But the case still got teeth, and they chew your limb.
Alrighty.
They still lie to you.
They still lying to you.
Same tongue, new crime. They still lie to you.
That's this song here. They're still lying to you about
And that
nuclear.
clock keep time.
James Lucas on YouTube. Is Japan and International Atomic Energy Agency hiding Fukushima fuel pool meltdowns? because it's behind Earth's extinction, the level event. That's exactly what's going on. And I've already provided you with more than enough information, hopefully tonight, for those assertions. And let me get back on track here. That was a good intermission. I got some nice ice water. We still got quite a ways to go tonight. Let me see this again. So that whale is severely emaciated. That is brutal emaciation. Let's do that one. It's another picture. I don't have, just 1 second. Let me do this. Let me capture that. When I say capture that, what I mean by that is I take a screen capture of where the frame is to. And so if I'm zoomed in, now I can go back to that in my control panel. I can click on it, and then it'll, I can have like a 19-second zoom out or a 2-second zoom out or whatever, right? But it just kind of brings a picture to life, and it keeps people's attentions. Magic. Shut up, Dana, get on with the video. Now that's severe emaciation, poor thing. Herring, starfish, clams, and lobsters also litter the shoreline. They tested for infections and diseases and toxins and predators and broader water quality issues, all coming back negative so far. Like, that showed up on the same beach as all the other dead species, but that died. That might have came ashore alive like that a week before that, right? But I mean, that's unbelievable emaciation you're looking at. Hey, that's the scientists. What do you expect? Their job is to screw you and your friends and your families and their friends and their families and everybody else on the planet and every species over, so an industry can have its way and ultimately destroy your biosphere and your ecosystem. Their job is to enable that. That's why they got the big paying job. That's why they get paid all that money to come out with a single paragraph or 2 minutes on TV. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Yeah, the poll is quite interesting. Let's look at the poll for a second. So earlier we had 13 viewers, and we had like almost 20 votes. And we had something like 22 likes or something. Now we got 20 viewers, 31 likes, and 21 votes, one extra. So there's incredible discrepancy. So your votes are not showing up. They don't like that connotation of the fuel pools melting down. And I explained that earlier. I'm going to do it again for you slightly, just to help reinforce it here and there. So when I'm talking about the fuel pool, I'm talking about what used to be on top of the building, but according to the media still is, but actually isn't. They're not even in Japan. They're in identical reactors in the United States. There's over 70 of them. Rare fin whale stranding in Norfolk puzzled scientists 6 years ago. Well, it's more than 6 years ago because I think this folder is some of it anyway, is around 2021, 2022. So this is now 9 years, 10 years rather, older or something. Rare fin whale stranding in Norfolk puzzles scientists. Experts say fin whales normally found on the south or west coast of the United Kingdom. That puzzled them, did it? Look at emaciation. Like, that is terrifying. That kind of emaciation is just next level, right? I mean, look at the tail. Like, yeah, and a fin whale is not it's a very streamlined whale, I must admit, but it's not like that. That's the vertebrae of the spine, right? Going all the way back to the tail. Clearly visible. If you were there and if that was a high quality picture, you would. Well, I don't need to say you would. I know you do now, but that comes from a spate of whale strands along the Norfolk region's coastline this year, with dozens having died in other parts of the North Sea. You never get them in the North Sea, so what is it doing here? We have no idea at that moment. It was starving. In desperation, it went down that side of the coastline. It broke a million-generation tradition of going the other way and went that way in desperation to find food. It's around 2016, I would imagine. Whales are dying off the coast of Cuvier. Nobody seems to know why 2016. At least 3 dead mink whales were spotted off the dying peninsula in 3 months. I mean, like, literally every story is starvation that I'm showing you tonight. That's incredible. That's 2016 stories. Every single one was starvation. So clearly the food chain was broken several years before that. But none of this stuff you're seeing in pre-Fukushima. That's what makes the stories so compelling, is it's post-Fukushima. A quarter of the entire stranding database, which goes back to 2000. So 3 was so they're saying it's a quarter, so 12 whales up to 2000 would have been documented, is what they're alluding to. And I still don't believe them even then. Another whale died off the coast of Down earlier this week. You couldn't see any obvious causes of the death. Really? There was a couple of other animals hurt. What does that mean? So there were at least 4, as many as 6, when you consider the whales washed in St. John's Point. It was entangled and roped, he said, but it's severely emaciated. Like, they don't know why this whale died. Like, you don't need to be a scientist to say it died of starvation, dude. And it looks not like the tail section looks nothing like a whale. There was 28 dolphins in January and February that died. We had at least 4 minke whales, which is a phenomenal amount for just this area. But they don't belong on that side of the coastline. It's very unusual to have so many dead ones in the one small area in the space of 10 or 12. Not unusual, it's never heard of pre-Fukushima. In the beginning of 2016, at least 30 sperm whales stranded on the European beaches. And not because we have the luxury of hindsight, we know they all died of starvation. They all died of starvation, right? In the beginning of 2016, saw the largest ever mass stranding of sperm whales on UK and European beaches. As many as 31 whales washed up in the North Sea during a 6-week period. The biggest unusual mortality event in the region in several hundred years. Look, the records don't go back very long, actually. Right? They certainly don't go back several hundred years. To have that number strand in a short space of time is hardly unusual. Project manager, lead scientist on the necropsies, animals autopsies, tells CBS News. But when you look at their fins, their spinal columns, and now we have hindsight, we know they starved to death. It's very easy now to compare them to the other ones and say, okay, well, they starved too. They had not starved to death, is what they're saying, right? But clearly they starved to death. You can see their spinal column sticking out. They're starving to death. The deep sea creatures swam in the shallow water would have been difficult for them to feed. Like it takes them months and months and months to die of starvation. So they're not just going to get up on the beach, not get a meal, and then fucking starve to death, okay? You disgusting creature. They had not starved to death, Dana. That's so crazy. The reason they put that there is because all the whales are starving to death. No. They did not starve to death. I seen it on TV, Dana. You're wrong. Okay, meat hit, whatever. Lost and hungry. They then stranded on the beach. They had not starved to death. They were just lost and hungry. Takes them months and months and months and months and months, even a year and a half to die from starvation. Getting washed up on the beach and missing a couple of meals is not going to be an issue, okay? But how do you not feel contempt for the people that write that stuff, I wonder? How can they ever look anybody in the eyes, see? How can they look themselves in the mirrors? How does that work? They're doing it for their job. And it's unconscionable that a journalist of all people is the last person you're going to go to find something, to find facts. That's a crazy statement. So the average person can't comprehend that. If the average person who watches TV will keep watching TV. Oh yeah, that's a terrible law, and they'll turn around and watch the same news channel. Honey, did you hear what they said? We got to start investing money in this nuclear company. The obvious candidates of naval sonar, the obvious candidates, Navy sonar, seismic exploration, climate change, El Nino, movement of prey. Oh, the prey's not eating here or living here anymore. Some very, like the large halon colossal. So they're throwing everything in there and hoping something will pacify you. Honey, they said it could be the churn. Which reality, it wouldn't surprise me. Everyone gets a theory. At this stage, we're still keeping an open mind. Everyone got a theory. That's the lowest, but they didn't die of starvation, but everybody's got a theory. But you can't say starvation, though. Lunatics. Hey, it's just a scientist. What do you expect? Just, like, if a scientist doesn't try to cut your throat, I'm very concerned. That's not normal. It's normal for the scientist to cut your throat. That's just the way the world works. If the scientists don't cut your throat, you need to contact authorities immediately because there's something wrong. Their job is to cut your throat, right? Look at the Geiger counter up there, over 200 counts per minute. .200 counts per minute. 2 orcas found dead in the BC waters of endangered population. Gee, I wonder how they died. I was in bed, like normally my show starts 10 o'clock. Just not normally, that's my time. And it's typically 5 days a week. I was asleep last night at 10:30. Just burnt out from the smoke. The body of an orca calf in BC. Alaska, well, all the whales, all the killer whales in BC that are dying are emaciated, by the way. There's another dead calf. No successful calves for first 6 or 7 years after Fukushima. Alaska seabird die-off investigation hindered by data gaps. Something is amiss in the food web. When you start off with something is amiss in the food web, guess where that story is going? You guessed it. I was on research expeditions at this point. During all of this, actually, I was on the ocean, not all of it that year, but I think it was a 4 to 5 month, again that year, we were doing research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. Holy crap, how much shit do I cover every night? Let me get my act together here. My apologies. It takes me a minute. No, that's not where I wanted to be. Or maybe it is. Hang on. It's 2016. I was out doing research expeditions on the Pacific Ocean. And just almost there. From Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. And British Columbia got 27,000 islands. And so the arrows is just meant to show you places where I was anchored. So generally what I'm doing is I'm anchoring, and then this zodiac or this zodiac is typically what I'm using. So the big zodiac will tow the little zodiac. And because that burns 12 gallons an hour, that one only burns 4 gallons a week or something, right? And so the idea was that would get you, keep everything dry. You got a stove in it and everything else. And then this would get you right up on the beaches without taking chances. The other boat is fine, but you know, that's been to Alaska 6 times. And so there's a lot of wear and tear on those engines, right? It's stupid. To the point now where it doesn't work. I can't get it to work anymore. And I've tried everything, but it's very expensive to keep that, and it's killing us. We can't get the research done. So to your left is what the coastline should look like, and to behind me is what it looks like. And so the migratory birds, when they're coming, and we're going to get back to that story, the migratory birds were coming along the coastlines, could go into the tidal zones, and there's like clams, there's different types of clams, there's little necks and manillas, there's razorbacks, there's oysters, there's gooey ducks, there's snails, there's mollusks, there's periwinkles, there's all these different species of each of them, of just clams. There's around 80 plus species of starfish. Each species come in multiple vibrant colors. There's around 84 species of sponges. There was around 74, 76 species of sea anemones. They all come, each species came in multiple vibrant colors. There was incredible diversity of corals and sea urchins, which made it impossible to get your zodiac up on the shores. You could never do that in a healthy British Columbia coastline because you would end up with all kinds of holes, right? And they tried to blame it at one point. There was in 2016, they actually suggested that cancer was jumping from species to species to species, and each species was giving cancer to the other species alongside of it, and that's why all the species were gone. Now, I was out doing research expeditions for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean without coming home. So the migratory birds, when they're coming along this coastline, typically would have incredible diversity, right? At low tide, with a 19-foot tide exchange, there's around 700 algae. There's around 380 species of worms, sea worms, saltwater worms. There was 20,000 insects at the high tide line. There was 5,500 invertebrates without the backbones in the 700 algae in the tidal zones. So there's incredible diversity for the migratory birds. And we went back year after year for so many years because the species were missing, right? And we wanted to see did they recover. And unfortunately, they didn't. Okay, let's come back here. Bear with me. Keep going. So we got a couple of weeks of getting through this stuff. And this is your foundation I'm bringing in tonight. Alaska seabird die-off investigation hindered by data gap. So I'm making sure there's no data gap for our investigation. Something is missed in the food web. This is the craziest statement imaginable. And remember, this is still 2016. So you can see, even in 2016, I was very diligent in documenting everything. I missed a lot because I was on the ocean for 4 to 5 months at a time without coming home. And I was just demonized, just hated. I was hated. The industry had a full team of scum and public relation firms out there denigrating every video, every interview, every comment that anybody that said they liked Dana was immediately set up on by a host of scum and degenerates. See, I got that personality. I can handle that stuff. It's not fair. It's not right, but it's not gonna deter me. It's not gonna change the work I'm doing. It's not gonna stop me from doing the research. And like people, anybody could do this stuff. You don't have to be. The only thing is, you got to know the industry is coming for you, and they're going to be gunning the whole time. So there was it was 1.1 or something, 1.2 million common murres. That's what you're looking at there. Had washed up in 2016. When I was out on the research expeditions, as I showed you the pictures, the coastline was stripped. There was no subsidy food. So the common murres couldn't get their migratory species. And remember, these are birds that dive for a living. They dive all day up to 600 feet, and they do it with ease. They're genetically predisposed. They're genetically created to dive 600 feet all day long. And they feed on anchovies and squids and sardines and krill, which are like shrimps. Not like a shrimp, but they're shrimps. And they do it all day, every day. It's easy for them, right? They're very successful because they're one of the deepest diving birds we know of. So they're enormously successful in raising their fledglings because they have the advantage over every other bird. And so you had over 1 million of them showed up in severe emaciations. This was Alaska, but it also came all the way down to where we were doing the research. We never seen any, so live or dead. Scientists say unusual warm water in the North Pacific may have an effect on forage fish and zooplankton eaten by small fish. Murres themselves will eat larger zooplankton such as krill, a small crustacean that floats in the water column, migratory. But they'll also come ashore and eat the microscopic shrimp and the small shrimp and the algae, right? But they'll eat all kinds of sardines and herring and anchovies and squid. So they can eat both spectrums of the food chain. But what was interesting about this was that they lived to be 20, 25 years of age. They've been millions of generations. They can use up their fat reserves and drop to a critical threshold for starvation if they don't eat regularly. So at the same time, there was 1.4 million Cassini auklets showed up in the same areas, and they were emaciated also. And what was unique about that combination was you had two spectrums of the food chain. The Cassini auklets eat the actual microscopic animals, whereas the common murres will eat the production of the microscopic animals like the anchovies and the squid and the krill and the sardines and small fish, very small animals. So you had two different spectrums of the food chain showing up emaciated in the same area on the migratory route. And then the Cassini auklets, the reason they were there is because, like the common murres, right, the species that are feeding on the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestration chain, the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, stuff like that, the anchovies, squid, the sardines, the krill and stuff. And the krill themselves are feeding on the microscopic animals, right? So it's that migratory cycle of life that's been going on for millions of generations was snuffed out by Fukushima. It would have been snuffed out eventually by 1,000 fuel pools worldwide, but Fukushima was a pulse event. The Alaska population of the common murre is estimated, now we had over 1 million of them in 2022 down here, showed up severe emaciation over 600 miles of the coastline. And they were showing up in freshwater, they were showing up in the communities. And the government was showing up every morning and scooping them up and taking them away and not saying nothing to nobody. There was 230 colonies. All the colonies failed post-Fukushima. It's symmetrical now across the board. Die-off's not been documented before have been documented before, but not to this degree. They've been documented during radioactive fallout from nuclear weapons testing, which is a nuclear war, it's the same radioactive fallout. Right? You can trace the die-off of all the species back to the nuclear testing era. Once the nuclear industry started hemorrhaging into it, and it dumped, what they dumped into the oceans for the first 30 years, just the first 5 years, in the 50s, late 40s and the 50s, would have eventually killed the planet's oceans. But it didn't stop for 30 years because the ocean's very big. Eventually, you moved all this stuff everywhere, so the entire ocean is contaminated for a billion years. During the first 10 days of January, researchers counted 17,000 dead MERS on beaches and 854 more in vessel surveys. Now, the puffins, they had found like 150. They figured half the population had died because you found 150. Let me see if I can find that. Because that's definitely part of the equation, right? Now, we just got 1,300 pictures of puffins. We didn't see any pufflings, any fledgling. There we go, we should get it this time. Yeah, let me bring that in there. And we'll come back to this story. Because you can see a pattern as you're looking at this stuff. That's the one thing that I'm really good at, is finding patterns and die-offs. Puffins are starving to death in incredible numbers 2016, the same year. Just they seen 250. So they believe the actual number, and that's the second paragraph from the top, the actual number of dead puffins is much higher, to the point that half the puffin population in the Pacific may have been dead. So they found 250, and the scientist makes the assertion that therefore half the population of the Pacific Ocean, millions, must have died because you found 250 in just shy of 3 weeks. And he died of starvation. Okay, come back to the other story we were just covering. This is back to the common MERS. This is the same year. Only about 15% now. At the same time, the Cassini auklets, and I got that there somewhere, but we're not going to get to that till later in the week, I guess. Because I can't bring you everything tonight, right? Obviously. Dina, duh. Only about 15% of the carcasses reached shore, and only a fraction of the beaches were surveyed. So they estimated it would be in the hundreds of thousands. Now, because we have the luxury of hindsight. We've followed this story to its conclusion. They originally tried to blame it on domoic acid. Of course, that turned out not to be true. And it was acknowledged that they died of starvation. What's unprecedented about this die-off is first the spatial extent of the die-off, which covers most of southern Alaska. The second, it represents an extended period of time. So there was nothing in the tidal zones, as I showed you from my research expeditions, during that same period, and previous, and then many years after it, right? We've done research expeditions over and over and over through that whole coastline. I just took my time and just meandered through the 27,000 island pinch points and find safe places where there's always hundreds of islands, and then where I got lots of shelter, and just get into the sheltered area so I didn't get, because I was out there in very adverse conditions trying to document this, and for that I'm one of the most hated people on the planet, and most censored people by a large margin. Only about 50% of the carcasses reach shore. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, we got through that. In a lake, they found almost 8,000 in a single lake. In more than 3 decades of monitoring the birds in the Barrens, we've never had complete reproductive failure before, and it wasn't just there. 8,000 MERS washed ashore, By early winter, starving and disoriented birds were found not only near shore water, but 360 miles from salt water, something we've never heard tell of or ever seen before, anywhere. 360 miles away, there was 800 dead murs. That's another story, not this one, but there was another version of 800 murs that washed up on a single shoreline on a big lake, 360 miles inshore from salt water. In January review of the recovered carcasses, birds hatched in 2015 were apparently absent. And body size measurements, so the babies from 2015 didn't survive. And you had the mass species die off, right? Body size measurements suggested there were many were subadults or less than 5 years old. The emaciated murs' stomachs have been mostly empty. Emaciated? If murs already were struggling, the hurricane-force storms late December could also have prevented them from foraging, according to researchers. Well, once you get down below the storm waves, and they dive 600 feet all day, the ocean is always the same, right? I was a commercial diver. Once you got below the height of the wave, so if you were diving in 4-foot waves, ground swells or something like that, or 8 foot even, it didn't matter. When you got down to 16 feet, it was flat calm. Because I used to always ask my tenders were they going to be okay at the surface because it was pretty rough, right? In bad weather, you always hide behind islands, but it's still pretty rough. And if they were okay with it and they felt safe, then I would go ahead and dive. Because diving was easy. Once you got down 15, 20 feet, it was always perfectly flat calm. Well, you got currents and everything, right? You're doing 2 marathons on the human body every day of work. But there was supercell storms showing up with winds of exceeding 200 and 225 mile per hour winds coming ashore, like the Philippines and China. Originally, we've seen these supercell typhoons and supercell cyclones, that were unprecedented in size and scope and duration, that when they hit the coastline, they just sat there and chewed up millions of people's properties, and that they turned everything into projectiles with wind speeds exceeding, sometimes winds gust exceeding 280 miles per hour. But it wasn't unusual to have wind gusts steady of 250 miles per hour. And there's no country, there's no communities on the entire planet with infrastructure, with building codes to build something for 250 miles per hour, right? It's not normal. We've never seen it before. Yep, there's a scientist. Yeah, nothing here. The whales were on a hunger strike, Dana. There's lots of food out there. They just went on a hunger strike because that's what whales do sometimes, Dana. People do it. Whales do it, Dana. Oh, I know, scumbag. Have a nice day. Hopes are high for stranded humpback whale. It's got a peanut head, for goodness sakes. You can see spinal column sticking out. It's severe emaciation. He's actually got a peanut head. Hope high for stranded humpback whales. Well, 7,000 of them starved to death, so it's no big surprise to see one emaciated, trust me. And the media knew the difference. Rescue say they are hopeful a humpback whale found stranded on the south of Scotland coast will make a full recovery after it was refloated. Usually they'll say it can't recover because its organs are crushed. But they didn't say that for the first 5, 6, 7 years. But then they start saying narratives like that. That's emaciated. It, starved to death. Checks the following day found no sign of the whale, and medics will monitor the coastline. Ambulances are driving along the coastline looking for the whale, Dana. Everything's cool. Over the coming days, you sure it has not gotten stranded again. Man, this is British media. You got to hate British media. I pity the British people, more so now than, even back in the day, we pitied them, but now they got the invaders now taking over their country. Military-aged invaders that don't intend to work. What does that mean, I wonder? perfect for the military if they want to turn them against their own country, I guess. It said humpback whale live stranding in the UK were very few and far between. Not anymore, is not. And it had responded to only a handful. Yeah, all of them post-Fukushima. Well, they can't say that no more. This is 2016. Move ahead 9 years and there's always whales. There's 20,000 a year, Dana, according to Berkeley University. Yeah, they're scumbags, but they're a university, Dana. That's severe emaciation. Like, look at the tail. That's holy shit stuff. That's like, oh my goodness. You can even see his rib cage. That's severe emaciation, folks. Just another day in the scumbag nuclear world. They really are just a worthless bunch, aren't they? It is almost miraculous. Yeah. We hope the humpback recovers fully and was merely caught out by the huge tides in the region, BBC. Was caught out. The emaciated whale was caught out. The whale that starved to death was caught out by the huge tides, I guess. It beached itself because they couldn't hold its blowhole out of the water anymore. That's what they do. Insects are disappearing, and we should be very, very worried. It's a 2024 story. You know, insects are the creatures that act as lubricant in the machine of life. That's a good way of putting it, I suppose. From pollinating vital crops to managing organic waste on a continental scale. They're the biota, right? They break down everything. And they're on their way out. You'll have we already talked about this a few times. Just hang on one second, because if I keep talking about it and I'll show you the documentation, the apologist will cut the clip out and say, why didn't he show you the documentation? He always does it. He got it right there. Because it's a lie. He's a liar. I can see right there now. They've done it to me so many times, eh? So very careful to cover all my bases. There we go. It's a fun story. It's just a normal everyday story. We hope the humpback whales. This is about the grey whales. So the grey whales. Grey whale die-off feared as starving whales migrate north. The whales were already in poor shape last fall when they began their 12,000-mile migration to the breeding and calving ground in Baja, California. They were emaciated. They were dying and showing up everywhere emaciated. They had no surviving babies, but they were, let's go with this, very poor shape. You know what that means? They're emaciated. The whales we are seeing are extremely emaciated. They have bulging ribs with shoulder blades and vertebrae visible even from the shoreline. So what they're saying is the 13,000 grey whales that are left migrating north, they had 80 babies. There'll be none left when they get north and turn around, and a lot of them will be dead by then. In 2 years, there will be no grey whales. There might be a couple of hundred, but the year after, there will be none. In 3 years' time, there will be no grey whales. We've lost 14,000 post-Fukushima that we know about, and there's 13,000 left. They're all emaciated. And it's severe emaciation. And the food chain is now broken. But a lot of them have leukemia. They have so much bioaccumulation of radiation in their body, even if they find nutrition, not able to uptake it because they have cancer. They have severe cancer. They're producing more white blood cells than red blood cells. The problem is that they were quite quickly disappearing. That's 2024. That was October 2024. Almost a year ago. There's a scientist. They all look perfectly healthy. It looks like ship strikes to me, Dana. I can hear scientists. You show scientists that picture, they're going to say, that's definitely ship strikes right there, Dana. You think I'm kidding, don't you? I'm not. That's what a scientist will do. He'll say, ship strikes. clearly ship strikes. Dead murres pile up on the beach, 2016. Yeah, there's over 1 million common murres. A complete colony collapse and failure to breed. 300 plus colonies failed. Many of the murres appeared emaciated, starved to death. Not many, but all of them. Thousands of birds found dead along the Alaska shoreline in 2016. It's an order of magnitude larger than any recorded that they're aware of. A 1 mile stretch of beach was 8,000. Estimate 100,000 common murres have died. It's hard to know how many birds died because Alaska's so big, so many remote areas. The vast majority of the birds' deaths are due to starvation. Well, it can't be the vast majority. It has to be all of them. They're all eating the same food. So they're all fairly healthy, or they're all really healthy, or they're all starving to death. There's no middle grounds there. Same thing with whales. You can't have half the whales emaciated and the other half healthy. Right? They're on the same 12,000 migratory route, for instance, with the grey whales. So they're either all emaciated or they're all healthy. Or they're all in the middle, whatever. There has to be a consistency, it's symmetric. Tests on 100 carcasses revealed almost all the murres were emaciated. Again, what do you mean almost all the murres? They would have extrapolated on it a bit. They would have said, well, some are eating this and some ate that. No. The culprit is likely the lack of food, of a good food supply, the lack of a good food supply. I've never heard anything like that. Scientists have dubbed it the blob. It's the Fukushima blob. Massive emissions from the nuclear meltdowns and explosions and dumping and everything else. So there's approximately 2.8 million murres in Alaska. They acknowledged over 1 million had died back then, after the fact, right? Not in 2016, they didn't admit it, I don't think. But around 2018 or something, after the domoic acid was disproved, they finally acknowledged there was over 1 million of them. 150,000 Adeline penguins presumed dead after giant iceberg blocks access to food. Well, the iceberg can't block up, because like penguins can dive, right? So the iceberg couldn't block up their access. It just couldn't do it. But they may have just moved elsewhere, so they're just throwing whatever they can at it. But when you invoke the word food, right, then you're making the assertion of starvation clearly. Or they might have moved somewhere else. What kind of research in academic science does that? Well, the ones that are beholden to the nuclear industry, that's for sure. It's madness. The whole story's madness anyway, isn't it? So every story you've seen tonight was starvation and broken food chains. Starvation and broken food chains. Let me see. I get stuck in quite a few songs with James. James put out a whole bunch of music the weekend. I'm going to disrespect him and play a song he put out last week. Even though he's got some just crazy stuff that I should play from the weekend. I'm going to put a stop to the show tonight right here. Encourage everybody to give me a thumbs up that makes it this far or made it this far. Bless your hearts. And this was a foundation that continues tomorrow night. And over the next couple of weeks, we got to get through 2,800 pictures. Where am I to? We got to get through 2,800 pictures. On top of that, we took from 2 research expeditions this month of puffins and gannets and some kittiwakes, eagle. I got chased out by a couple of crows or seagulls, I can't remember. And we got all kinds. We got recent die-off that I'm not going to get done tomorrow night, but hopefully the next night. Stay around, it's a good time. Get your family around to the TV set, watch these shows. Some popcorn. Good times. Oh, yeah. Is Japan hiding Fukushima fuel pool meltdowns? How do you got 22 votes? Because it's PI and Earth's extinction level event. Now, I laid out my case at the beginning of the presentation tonight. James got all kinds of new songs. She Kissed a Dry Cast is such an important story. You put a link below it. And that's what I done. My last show was on the same subject as that music and video you put out. It's a perfect song, eh? Gummy bears included. Atom Thugs are super good. Vienna Protocol is super good. T-minus nuclear. The guy that you see on the screenshot, he's a nuclear engineer, and nobody will ever forget it. And his job is to come out and tell you it's like a banana and a potato chip and walk in the sunshine. James couldn't sit in silence anymore. Come out and plugged him really good. The song at the beginning of the show tonight was They're Still Lying to You. Is that video right there? And that's a super good one he just put out yesterday. If I had done the show last night and didn't get choked out, we would play that song. And that's what I was going to play tonight, Alien Alloy. Maybe I'll do 2 of them. Maybe I'll play this one, and I'll play Less Than a Gram. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to play this one because I really like this one. There's something about this. He does different genres, right? So he does all the footage, all the graphics, all the videos, and the music. Everything is, he got over almost 400 anti-nuclear songs there. So we're going to start off with this one. I'm going to come back and we're going to play the other one for a closeout tonight. Because, hey, I'm that kind of a guy, right? Have a good night. Hugs for everybody. Take care. That's opposite. Let's try that again.
twisted bed. Glass and slag where the workers fled. Concrete blistered, pipes torn bare. A thing still counting, it lingers there. Stone without lineage, teeth without end. Buried but burning, it does not bend. Pools erupted, the vessel dry. A stranger alloy that will not die. Crumb Alien alloy, molten birth. Alien alloy, no native earth. Alien alloy, ticking slow. Alien alloy, we made what we don't know. Half-life counting in the buried ground. Centuries core where silence is found. Symbols etched where no one stays. The alloy waits when the rest decays. Alien alloy, slag runs deep. Alien alloy, it will not slip.
Okay, we got one more. And here we go. It's less than a gram.
Right beside old Unit 3 sits a shell-marked waste, you see. Tanks of resin stacked with care, holding what the pumps caught there. TEPCO field 2 plans to show. One says yes, the other no. Each awaits a coming call. Neither clears the path at all. Less than a gram, that's what they've got from Unit 2, and that was a lot. Fuel remains in buried rooms while they measure water plumes. Early 30s, so they say, when the work might get underway. Decommission down the line, mid-century's hopeful sign. 880 tons remain, none retrieved from 3's domain. They debate what space to claim. Still the building tin stays the